Good afternoon, everyone. As a first thing I wanted to show you, this is a robot. This photo is from 2 months ago. It's a robot conducting the Philharmonica Orchestra in Italy. So this is just to give us a bit of a taste of where we are in terms of technology. And if you've been to the artificial intelligence track, you would have seen a lot of those artificial intelligence revolutionary things that we have at the moment as well. But let's take a step back, right? Not even robots running orchestras. If you go to Google right now, and I landed in Berlin yesterday, and I went to Google, and I Googled where to eat in Berlin, and then I thought maybe I could try this in German, and then I had no idea how to pronounce that. Someone helped me, so it's something like Wo kann man in Berlin essen? There are 17 million results to that question, right? And Google even humiliates us, saying that it calculated that in 0.43 seconds. And in which of those results do we click? 91.5% of people end up clicking on the results from the first page of a Google search. So do we think that that decision was us, or was it Google who actually helped us make that decision for us? If out of 17 million results, if we click on the result from the first page, are we autonomous enough from that decision, or was that the algorithms of search from Google that actually influenced us to make that decision? So that's what I want to talk to you about. I call this Digital Nudge, and it's about these hidden forces that actually shape our digital decisions. Please ask questions through the app, and we'll try to answer them at the end. This number, 35,000, what does this mean? This is the average number of decisions that every human makes every single day. So that's probably a decision every 2 seconds. So think about it. 1, 2, you've just made a decision right there. I hope it's to keep paying attention to the presentation. But I want to tell you about an experiment. That experiment is actually what changed my life. About 7 years ago, someone told me about this experiment, and my life has changed completely. The way I see the decisions I make and the way I see the decisions that others make has changed completely. I don't know if anyone knows this experiment here. It's the Economist experiment. This magazine actually presented the subscribers with 3 options for subscription. One option was the digital version for $59. The other option was the print version for $125. And there was an option for a combo of print plus digital for $125. What happened was that most of the people actually bought the combo for $125. No one actually got the option in the middle, and a few people got the digital version. But the majority of people actually got the combo. And then they said, hang on, let's actually present these options in another way. Let's remove the option in the middle. Since no one bought it, why should we even bother presenting something that no one buys? So if you only present the digital version and the combo version, what happens is that the majority of the people end up buying the digital version. So I saw that experiment, and something inside of me went like, I wouldn't fall for that, because I'm totally rational and I make rational decisions, so that wouldn't happen to me. I would buy whatever I want to buy regardless of what I see. And then I ended up starting to study these things, right? And there is actually a name for this option in the middle. It's called decoy. It's an option that is put into an equation to influence you to make a decision. There is even a formula. If you have 2 options, A and B, and if you want people to select option B, you actually give them an option minus B that makes B look better. So pretty much someone would say, why am I going to pay $125 on the print version only if I can pay $125 for both? And then suddenly this option looks so much better that we don't even look at the other option. Of course, that happens to a majority of people. It doesn't happen to everyone. And then something inside of me really wanted to understand why that happens, right? And one TED Talk actually helped me understand this. And it was a TED Talk that compared these things to optical illusions. So as we all know, we have problems in our brain when we see things. Our vision is not perfect. So when we look at an image like that, the blue circle on the left looks slightly bigger than the blue circle on the right? But they're actually the same size. What happens is what's around it actually influences the way we see things. So because what's around something influences the way we see things, what's around a decision also influences what we will decide. This optical illusion here is really creepy because it makes me think that I'm really problematic. The square A and the square B are actually the same color. It's the same gray color. So when you do that, you actually see they are the same color. So I actually opened on Photoshop and copied the little square from the A and then pasted on top of B, and it's actually the same color. What happens is what's around A is light. So A seems darker because what's around it is light. What's around B is shade, and then that's why B looks a bit brighter. But they are actually the same color. Basically, what's around something influences the way we see it. So the same way that we have optical illusions, we have what we call cognitive biases. They're like optical illusions, but they are optical illusions of behavior, and we call them cognitive illusions or cognitive biases. So I'll refer to these things throughout the talk, and they're pretty much these little bugs that exist in our brain when we make decisions. And to give a bit of a background in terms of where they come from, think about psychology, and usually when I talk about this, I say that it's the psychology behind the decisions we make, and people go like, but is it like the psychology of Freud, of like, is it like when we lay down and we talked about a problem? So it's not that type of psychology. Psychology is that big blue circle. Inside that big blue circle, there is cognitive psychology that understands a bit of how we see things and how we learn things, language and other things. And there is an area called behavior economics, which actually uses cognitive psychology and neuroscience to understand economic decisions and public choice. Dan Ariely was actually mentioned by the previous talk here. I don't know if someone was here. He's one of the main authors on that area. He wrote this book, Predictably Irrational. And it was actually through this book and through one of his TED Talks that I got to understand a lot more of our irrationality. And there is also another very nice book called Nudge from Richard Taylor and Cass Sustain. And interestingly enough, last month on 9th of October, we were all really happy, like everyone who likes behavior economics was really happy because Richard Taylor actually got the Nobel Prize from 2017 in economics for combining psychology and economics. That was just like a month ago. So to bring this a bit to our reality in technology, I want to bring to you a case study. I was working on a project. It was an insurance project. We wanted to sell insurance straight to the customers. Usually we buy insurance through a broker, but in this case, they wanted to sell it straight to the customer. And I don't know if you've ever bought insurance here, but to buy insurance, you have a lot of options, right? You have to tick that, and then there's many, many options. You can buy those 2 options, or those 3, or those 2, and then basically there was a situation where to buy an insurance, we had 511 options to buy that insurance. What we did was, how can we simplify that interface so that users don't have all those options, and we actually simplify their lives? So people on the project actually decided to do what we call digital personalization. But when we do digital personalization, we have to think about based on what we'll personalize. In that case, it was based on profession and other characteristics as well. So if the person was a photographer, they would see those 3 options. If the person was a mechanic, then they would see those other 3 options. It was during that moment when I combined the knowledge I was learning from behavior economics and what I saw on that project that I really realized that there is a lot of power in the hands of people who actually personalize that. And personalization is a big pillar in the digital world because we can personalize it to the extreme that each person will see a different digital interface. In the physical world, that's quite difficult because we can't just say if someone walks into a room, I will set up this whole room personalized for each and every one of you. But a mobile app can be personalized to each and every one of you. And then I realized that there is a lot of power in the hands of UX people. I don't know if there's anyone here who works with UX, user experience, or experience design. But those roles on projects are quite important because these people, they actually define how this environment in which users will make decisions is designed. In behavior economics, there is a name for people who actually design physical environments. They're called choice architects. So I actually call UX people digital choice architects because they are designing the environments which are digital in which users will make the decisions. There's a number, and I saw that research was quite interesting because there is a number that in Austria it's 99% and in Denmark it's 4%. I asked in one of my talks if anyone knew what that was, and someone said it's the number of Austrians. Could be. But in this case, it's the number of organ donors. And it's quite interesting. So when I saw that research, I understood that in Austria, you already are an organ donor. You have to ask to leave. It's an opt-out version. And in Denmark, you are not an organ donor. You have to ask to be an organ donor. So just by having what is called the default changes everything, because by default, you already are something. So humans are lazy. We just have a tendency to remain on whatever default is. So pretty much it's quite important to define what is the default, because if you define what's the default, the majority of the people will remain on whatever the default is. I actually looked up as well the research to see where Germany was, and on that research it was 12%. But we try to use the max and the minimum numbers here. So quite interesting. This is one of the most representative behavior economics research to explain the power of default. And default is actually one of these biases. So one of these things we have in our brains that actually make us decide one way or another, the default bias is one of them. It's called status quo bias. When I learned about these things, suddenly I started to visualize them in the digital world because I work with technology, and then I started to see things. You know when you learn something and you start to see something that you didn't see before. So I was filling out my Netflix subscription, and then suddenly I saw that. Please do not email me Netflix special offers. So pretty much the default was to email me, and then if I don't want to receive, I have to check. So by default, they will send me the offers. Basically, someone made a decision on my behalf that I want the email offers, and then if I don't want, I have to do something. It's quite interesting. I opened an Uber, and then suddenly there was something pre-selected, the Uber pool. I don't know if there is Uber pool here, but recently they released that, and then pretty much the Uber pool allows you to share your car with another passenger, so you can pay less, but then you have to go to wherever the other person is going as well. And then it was already pre-selected. So pretty much someone from Uber decided that the Uber pool was the decision that I wanted to take. In that case, I actually went and I tried the Uber pool because it was already selected. But it was quite interesting because once that I know that, now I'm aware of the fact that people are doing this to me. So I can be manipulated, but I can be consciously manipulated, right? So it's like I want to be manipulated. I know you're manipulating me, but I want to do that. It's very different from being manipulated and not even knowing about that, right? So, and I was actually talking to an Uber driver, and he said that there was this lady who approached the car, and she had selected the carpool, and then there was another passenger in the car, and the lady was like, so what's with the other passenger? And the driver said, you selected the pool. And the lady went like, I selected the what? So she didn't even know that she had selected something because it was pretty much pre-selected for her. That's the power of the defaults. And with the defaults, there is a lot of power, right? But there's a lot of responsibilities as well. That's why I want to talk to you about a few things. You will have received an email from GOTO conference, and in the email, there was something that said, when you signed up to GOTO Berlin, you accepted to delegate all your decisions to the members of the organizing committee. Did anyone read that? No, you actually didn't have that. So for GOTO Berlin, I actually didn't do this, but I gave a TEDx talk the other day, and for the TEDx, I actually organized with the committee beforehand, and we actually did that. So we put that on the text for everyone who received, and then that was the text. It's all in Portuguese, so you'll have to agree with me that that's what it means. It said that everyone who signed up for TEDx was already delegating all the decisions of their lives, and out of 400 people, only 13 of them actually asked to leave. They only opted out. So pretty much almost 400 people have taken a decision without even knowing. There is a very nice website called Dark Patterns. It's from Harry Brignall. He actually cataloged a few of these things, and he called them dark patterns. One of them that I really like is the one that says sneak into basket. Pretty much there are some e-commerce websites that if you buy, let's say, a tablet, they actually put a tablet case inside your trolley because you might as well want to buy one. So they already shove it into your trolley, and then if you want to get it, that's okay. If you don't want, you have to remove it, right? And that's an anti-pattern or a dark pattern that Harry calls sneak into basket. Sometimes I imagine in the real physical world, we wouldn't accept that, right? Can you imagine you're in the supermarket and then suddenly someone comes and puts something in your Like, we would never accept that. So why is it that we accept that in the digital world? It's because we behave differently in the digital world. But to bring you the level of awareness that I really wish someone had, I want to show you a few of the digital defaults. Every time you see one of these things, there is a default already decided for you. Every time you see a checkbox, if it's checked, if it's not checked, every time you see a drop-down, it might have been selected, or someone might have chosen, like, what's the order that we have this drop-down? If we have it alphabetic order, then you will be more likely to select the one on top. If it's not alphabetic, then, of course, there is someone who thought about the order. Anytime you see an autocomplete, if you actually start typing something and it autocompletes for you, you are more likely to select what comes on the autocomplete than to actually keep filling it. Search results, any default settings that comes on any mobile device that you buy, someone has already pre-selected that. Timelines as well. When you go on Facebook or Instagram or anything that has a timeline, you actually are seeing what they chose for you to see, because what has been rendered over there, it's based on whatever rules that Facebook or Instagram or any other timeline like LinkedIn, they actually decided to render for you. So those are all defaults. So I want to talk to you about a concept called nudge, which is the name of that book. I actually went yesterday and tried to translate it. So it translated to shubs or shubs. I don't know how to say that, but hopefully it's shubs. So I was going to translate it to shubs, but then I translated it back. You know when you translate and you go on the way back? So I actually translated back, and shubs actually means shove. So I was like, that should be wrong. So let's stick to nudge. And just so we understand, nudge, it's not a push, it's not a shove, it's just a tiny push. So I will actually ask you to give it a bit of a nudge to the person on your side. Even if you don't know them, it's a great way of getting to know someone, right? So, yeah, cool. Don't drop them from the chair. Okay, cool. So that's a nudge. And what I want to talk to you about is what I call digital nudge, which is pretty much understanding all these little nudges that happen in the physical world and how can we adapt them to the digital world so we understand how we behave in the digital world and we are actually more aware of that. I'll ask you a question and I want everyone to actually respond that. So can you give me a thumbs up that you will respond? That helps, because if you don't do that, you usually don't respond. So that's also a bit of a trick. So it has to be very quick, right? So I'll ask you a question, and the first thing that comes to your mind, please just say it out loud. Say it really loud. Could be anything. Be careful, but it could be anything like related to the question. Just say it out loud. Cool? You have a bat and a ball, and the bat and the ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much is the ball?
10 cents.
Cool. 10 cents? A lot of people said 10 cents. Good. How much is the ball? 10 cents. Someone already thought it's 5 cents, so that's really good. So let's slow down for a bit, because we did it fast, and now let's do it slow. So when we think fast, it's 10 cents. Of course, like there's usually one or two people. Don't worry. Like more than 50% of Stanford and Harvard students always make this mistake. So don't worry. I also made it, so we're all on the same here. Except for one person who said 5 cents, which is really good. Talk to me afterwards. Maybe we can do some stuff together. So if the ball is 10 cents, then the bat is $1 more expensive, then it would be 110. The total is 120. So when we think better, then the ball is 5 cents because the bat is 105 and then it's 110. Cool? So pretty much what happens is, and if you want to understand a bit more about this, have a look at this book. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. Daniel Kahneman, who's also a Nobel Prize winner, has discovered through a lot of research that we have two brains, not really physically, hypothetically. It's like hardware and software. It's like we have two softwares running. One runs really fast, the other runs a bit slower. And when we think fast, we make mistakes. When we think slow, we make less mistakes than when we think fast. But we can't think slow all the time. Can you imagine if I'm just walking and I go like, should I walk with my left leg or with my right leg? Maybe if I walk with the left leg, we can't, right? So some things we just do automatically, and that's how we actually build habits, because habits are some things that we do thinking fast. I actually think about this concept not just about thinking fast and slow, but I think about it in the way of scrolling and clicking fast and slow. So can you imagine when you are scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, when you're liking things, when you're disliking them, when you're commenting on Facebook or on Instagram, can you imagine if you're thinking fast or slow? This is actually a bit of some data that came out recently. This is what happens in 1 minute on the internet. There's pretty much 16 million text messages sent. There are 900,000 logins on Facebook, 3.5 million search queries, 7,000 hours watched on Netflix. So it's quite interesting, like the number of things that we've been doing. And the insight I had was, how many of those things do we do thinking fast, and how many of them do we do thinking slow? So when you comment on a Facebook, do we think, or do we just comment the first thing that comes to our mind, as if we were saying the 10 cents that we just said now? Think about that. So I've lived in Australia for about 8 years. I work for this company called ThoughtWorks. And we also have offices here in Germany. We have 4 offices in Berlin, Hamburg, Cologne, and Munich. No, yeah? So we're hiring for those. We're also recruiting for those 4 offices all around here. So if you want, there's a booth upstairs. So I work for ThoughtWorks, and when I joined the company about 10 years ago, there was this reputation that working for the company was really fun. And then I moved to Australia. I'm originally Brazilian, and then I was like, so I'm going to go to Australia, and then I'm going to see a lot of kangaroos and koalas everywhere. And then I was like, am I thinking with my fast brain or slow brain? And that's really true. Like, there was a lot of koalas and kangaroos and everything, and there is also a lot of fun at the company. But also, because I'm Brazilian, when I was living in Australia, people would think that I would play soccer, and that Brazil would be full of beaches and everything. So the beach side is actually really true, but the soccer thing is actually not very true, because I'm a horrible player. In fact, there's a friend of mine, Jules, sitting over there, who's a much better soccer player than me, and he's Welsh. So you see how sometimes our thinking fast brain makes mistakes? This Fabio here is actually, in Australia, there's only one name, Fabio, and it's this one. So every time I said my name was Fabio, this is what people pictured in their minds. With their fast brain, because there is no slow brain there. Thinking fast and slow is another big concept from behavior economics, and the conversion from the physical world into the digital world is what I mentioned before, the clicking and scrolling fast and slow. But speaking of Brazil and all that, let me bring some data to you. Brazil is the first country to have more than 1 mobile per person. It has 1.38 mobiles per person. 90% of all today's data has been created 2 years ago. 10% of all digital photos have been taken in the last 45 days. And there are about 16 billion things connected to the internet right now. So given all those stats, do you think that those 35,000 decisions that we make every day, how many of those decisions are digital decisions? What I've defined as digital decisions are decisions that we either use one of our digital devices to make the decision, or it's a decision that we fully delegate to a digital device. How many of those? They've been increasing more and more. Can you imagine you see that headline for some news? People around you control your mind. When I saw that for the first time, I actually thought that was not true, right? But then it was from the Washington Post, so I clicked on it. It wasn't fake news. And then pretty much the research said that there was this news that had been scientifically proven that if you come into an airplane, let's say that's you, and the person sitting next to you actually buys something, your chances of buying jumps by 30%. So you're 30% more likely to buy something just because the person sitting next to you bought something. And my brother is a flight attendant, so I actually thought, how did they run that research, right? Did they partner with all the airlines, and then they got people to observe where people were sitting? I actually thought it was like a physical research, but it turns out it was a digital research. What happened was they grabbed all the data from almost 2,000 flights, from 257,000 passengers, and 65,000 transactions. With that customer behavior data, they ran thousands of mini experiments just with the data, and then there was a data insight that came out of the data, that your chances of buying jumps by 30% if someone next to you buys it. So this is what I believe it's data science helping us understand better how humans behave. So when we understand how better we behave, we can actually adjust and be more aware. Has anyone here heard about this insurance company called Lemonade? It's supposed to be the world's first peer-to-peer insurance carrier. It's got a $13 million budget to actually reinvent P2P insurance. It's like Uber for insurance, basically. What happened recently was that they've had the fastest claim. I don't know if anyone here had to lodge a claim, but it just takes ages for any type of claim to be returned. So they actually had a claim all paid in 3 seconds. So pretty much that was the fastest claim ever paid in the whole world. They have this thing called Behavior Lab, where they try to understand how people behave. It's something that happens inside Lemonade. So they treat human behavior really seriously. It's very similar to something we do at ThoughtWorks called Innovation Lab, where we actually go to where people are actually doing what they are supposed to be doing, and we run experiments with them. And the interesting thing is, do you remember that guy, Dan Ariely, who I spoke about, the predictably irrational? He was made the chief behavioral officer at Lemonade. So this is the overlap between a digital company, it's an insurance company, that is hiring a behavior economist to understand how humans behave to create a better digital product. I actually got the privilege to meet Dan Ariely the other day. In 2015, a friend of mine bumped into him at a coffee shop, and then we've actually been in touch since then. He's been a bit of a digital mentor for me, so it's a big privilege I have. So it's really changed the way I see things, and it's really changed my way of visualizing the digital world. So I just want to share with you, if you read about Dan, you will know that he actually burnt like a lot of his body when he was quite young on an explosion, and then he doesn't type when he emails, so he sends audios. So it's quite good because this is on one of the emails that we were exchanging. Then he sent me this advice on the book that I've been writing. So I just want to share that with you. I think there is some audio. Is the audio on? Is it not? No? Cool. So let's skip that. It's just a bit of an advice on the book. So what I wanted to tell you is that I was thinking about writing a book on one area, and then actually changed in one 30-second audio. He actually expanded my mind into writing a book completely different. So I'm working on this book right now, which is called DigitalNudge, and it's the overlap between behavioral science and the digital world, and it's really based on the concept of nudging. So if you want, it's coming soon. Please go to that website, digitalnudge.org, and then you'll get a free chapter as soon as it comes out. So a lot of people come to me and they ask, Fabio, by knowing a lot of these things of how humans behave, can someone be manipulated? And I say, yes, there is a lot of ways to manipulate people. There are two types of influence. There is persuasion and coercion. Persuasion is getting people to do the things that they want and that they need to do. And coercion is actually getting people to do things they do not want and that they do not need. So I believe we need more persuasion and we need less coercion. We need to help people do what they already need to do and what they want to do. That's why I started the Digital Nudges for Good movement. It's a movement where we try to understand in the digital space which products and which digital services are actually helping people do what they need to do. So for example, there is a continuous glucose meter that helps people understand when they need to take insulin if they have diabetes. Diabetes is a huge issue in the world. 1 in 12 people have diabetes now in the world. This company called Ayuda Heuristics is a very nice company that's using machine learning to actually help someone with diabetes with most of the decisions that they have today on their day-to-day lives. Understanding what they need to eat, when they need to sleep, what happens when they sleep more, what happens when they sleep less, what happens when they do this and when they exercise. And so this is a digital nudge for good. So we can influence someone to eat something, and that's persuasion, it's not coercion. This is a project from Australia called SmartCap. It's truck drivers wear that to prevent microsleeps. So when they're about to have a microsleep, the SmartCap actually measures their brain waves to give them a little nudge to wake them up and prevent an accident. That's another digital nudge for good. But I want to bring another perspective to you as well. This is a face recognition software. Let me see. So I think we've all seen one of these face recognition softwares. You look at it and it recognizes your face. And there is a very good TEDx talk from this woman called Joy. She actually found out that this very specific face recognition software doesn't recognize her face. And why? Because there is a process in face recognition, which is the training process, where they actually give a lot of photos to the algorithm, so the algorithm learns what's a face and what's not a face. And unfortunately, for this specific piece of software, no photos of black people have been given to the algorithm. So because no one thought about that, no one thought about diversity when they were actually training that algorithm, then we end up creating an algorithm with prejudice, right? We end up creating an algorithm that's not inclusive. We end up creating a computer that ends up not recognizing someone's face as a face because it hasn't learned that that's really a face. So Joy actually has a movement called encoding, which is supposed to have inclusive coding, where inclusivity and diversity is part of what we do when we are training algorithms. It's quite interesting because I read that news on the other day. After I had seen that TED talk from Joy, I read those news, and recently they had an AI algorithm judge someone just from their faces to tell if they were guilty or innocent. And that's quite revolutionary, right? You have someone who looks at a lot of faces, and then they learned that whoever is guilty or whoever is innocent. And in the article, it actually said, different from a human judge, the computational vision algorithm has absolutely no subjectivity, emotion, or prejudice. I agree with the emotion part, but the prejudice, it depends on how that algorithm actually learned what's a guilty face and what's an innocent face. Interestingly enough, on that result for that algorithm, it found out that people with a smaller mouth are more likely to be guilty on a crime, because it's decided that the size of the mouth is a relevant dimension to actually understand that, because the algorithm chose by himself. Now the algorithms are making the decisions on which dimensions they should be looking to create their own prejudices. I quite like that quote from the conference Mind the Product recently that says, the machines only know what we feed them. So we have to be really conscious about feeding computers with whatever we feed them. And also, when we decide which dimensions matter, we have to decide them carefully. This is a video from a Tesla in San Francisco. I don't know if anyone has seen that, but that's a autonomous vehicle. The vision from this car is much better than any driver's vision. It can see things from a distance that no one in this room can see, I'm sure, unless someone here is a superhero. So what you've seen there is everything that it's actually detecting. Objects, road lights, and everything. And it's driving by itself, right? We know that these cars exist. We know that they are already being trialed in a few places. But when we see that video, it kind of changes a few things. Of course, we have these cars driving around. Cars are making decisions on our behalf, right? So there are a lot of digital decisions being made by cars. Right now, we make a decision to actually turn left, turn right, to actually accelerate, or to actually brake a car. Like that's a human decision that we are delegating to a car. So it's becoming a digital decision. There is a website called moralmachine.mit.edu that actually comes up with a few challenges, ethical challenges to which we don't know the answers yet. So pretty much, if there is a car coming with 3 people inside the car, and it's coming at a speed that there is no way that they will not, like if it keeps going straight, it will kill these 3 people. So it's already calculated that. If I keep going straight, I will kill these 3 people. There is no way to stop, because it does that calculation very quickly. And if it turns here, it will crash on a wall, and it will for sure kill these 3 people. So which decision should that car make? Should the car kill these 3 people, or should the car kill these 3 people? So we are having decisions that computers are making to who they will kill. And there is no ethical code, there is no ethical moral or anything around that that tells us what we should be doing or what people writing those algorithms should be doing. The World Economic Forum has released what they call the moral dilemmas of the fourth industrial revolution, and that is definitely one of them. So I want to bring that to our awareness as well. It's called Ethics 2.0. So if you are working on an application, if you are working on anything that has digital decisions, think about what are the ethics behind that. Today I spoke to you about one and a few others of these biases that we have in our brains. One of them is called status quo bias, which is the tendency we have to stay on the default. Those are the mapped biases that we have now in behavior economics. So just understanding each and every one of those biases that we have in our brains just helps us become more aware of how we behave and how we make decisions. And just a quick thing, I want to ask you, is that a chihuahua or a muffin? Is this a labradoodle or a fried chicken? Sheepdog or mop? Parrot or guacamole? It's very hard, right? It's very hard. So that's part of an article that actually highlighted that in 2010, algorithms would look at a database of images and they would actually know what the images are with an error rate of almost 30% in 2010. Recently, last year, that number has dropped to 4%, right? And what's 5%? Humans. So last year, for the first time, we have algorithms detecting images better than humans. That's where we are right now. We have computers actually better than humans on a lot of things, including detecting what's a parrot or a guacamole. There is a new type of intelligence right now. We should question ourselves, what is that matters right now? There is an intelligence called DQ. It's been defined by the DQ Institute. If you want to know more, go to dqinstitute.org. It's claimed to be the new IQ and the new EQ. It's pretty much the type of intelligence that we need right now in the digital space. And it's been separated into a few capabilities around privacy, critical thinking, footprints, empathy, cyberbullying, screen time management, cybersecurity, and digital citizenship identity. That's the type of skill that we should be learning right now to become better and more aware in the digital world. So to take a few of takeaways from you, if you are a digital choice architect, if you are a UX person, or if you know anyone, if you work on your team with someone who designs interfaces, design them for good. If you have behavioral data, if you work for a company that actually has a lot of data around how people behave, run digital experiments to understand how your users behave and to help us understand how we behave as humans. And if you are a digital citizen, as I think we all are, let's improve our consciousness. Let's become more aware of how we make these decisions in the digital world. There's a number that in 2016 was 144 billion. Do you know what that number is? Other than the fact that I forgot to translate it from Portuguese? That's the number of steps that Pokemon Go users actually had. So 144 billion steps have been taken by Pokemon Go users, right? So Pokemon Go is a game that uses augmented reality. It's just an example of how these things are actually taking over the world where we are right now. Augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning, autonomous cars, all these things are just part of our day-to-day lives, and they will just be more and more part of our day-to-day lives. And I truly believe that if we understand how our brains work, we will create a better digital environment for all of us. Thank you. Duncan.
Thanks, Fabio. There are not a lot of questions, actually. Maybe people were just so immersed in the presentation. The first one, I think, is more of a comment, something around consensual manipulation and marriage. So I don't think it's a question. It actually ends with an exclamation point. And then there's one comment on the autonomously driving cars about the trolley problem. So surely when it comes to the trolley problem, the ethical, in quotes, thing to do is for the car to drive defensively, so not drive at a speed where it cannot safely stop or swerve, which is what human drivers are already doing. So I'm not sure there's a question in there. So
is that you?
Yeah.
I
Cool.
was wondering
So the person in the audience was saying that he was wondering if there were ever going to be any non-digital decisions anymore.
What I believe in, and it's always a belief, and if you came to the previous talk, like you know that it's always like we believe in something. There is no such thing as real truth, because we don't even know if we are in Berlin and if this is reality. What I believe is that we will switch our decisions. What we do is I think we'll delegate more and more decisions to digital devices, and then we will switch. We'll start making different decisions than the decisions we make right now. Just like right now, we make very different decisions from what we used to make 500 years ago. Like in 50 years from now, we'll make different decisions. But I don't believe that we will ever like become non-decision makers on anything. But that's a belief. And in terms of the what the car should do, feel free to go to moralmachine.mit.edu and actually say that, because what they're doing is they're crowdsourcing what people believe the car should be doing to actually inform some sort of ethical code that will be decided when those algorithms are written.
There's actually one of the German ministries had an ethics commission put together 20 ethical rules about autonomous driving. I think like supposedly one of the first list of those things, the first attempt at that. But they left me with a lot of questions, but maybe something to look up if you're interested in this.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I'll actually look that up and include it to the book and the presentations and all that. Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, that's a wrap then.
That's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.